The termination letter was printed on company letterhead. Nathan Cole noticed this detail the way he noticed most things, as data, as information to be filed and processed without reaction. He read the letter twice, folded it along its original crease, and placed it in the front pocket of his bag next to his transit card and his house keys. Then he stood up from his desk for the last time. It was a Friday afternoon in October. The engineering floor of Meridian Financial Group was doing what it always did at 4:45 p.m., gradually, visibly relaxing, monitors being dimmed, jackets being retrieved, the low-level energy of people transitioning from the week to the weekend. Nobody was watching Nathan pack his bag. Nobody had gathered at his desk to say something warm and regretful. The two colleagues geographically closest to him had their headphones in, as they usually did, in the particular solitude of open-plan office work. He took his coffee mug, plain white, purchased at a pharmacy, a gift from no one. His notebook, the current one, half filled with the precise shorthand that nobody else could read. A photograph of his mother and sister taken at a family dinner 3 years ago, kept in his desk drawer because his mother had given it to him and it felt wrong to throw away. That was everything. 9 years at Meridian Financial Group. 1 coffee mug, 1 notebook, 1 photograph. He walked to the elevator. Pressed the button. Waited. Nobody called his name. The doors closed. That was how it ended. By Monday morning, everything else would begin. But to understand what Nathan Cole's departure truly meant, what it cost the company in ways that would only become visible 48 hours later when the first alerts began cascading, you have to understand what Nathan Cole actually was, not what his job description said. His job description said Senior Systems Engineer. His job description described a role that could, in theory, be filled by any competent person with the right certifications and 5 to 7 years of relevant experience. His job description was a document that Derek Paulson, his manager, had written 3 years ago and not revisited since, because revisiting it would have required acknowledging how dramatically the reality had diverged from the description. What Nathan Cole actually was something that most organizations create accidentally and almost none of them recognize until it is gone. An institutional memory, made human. He had been at Meridian for 9 years. In those 9 years, he had been present for every significant infrastructure decision, every migration, every architectural change, every emergency fix at 2 a.m. when something failed, and the on-call team needed someone who understood not just what the systems did, but why they had been built the way they had been built. He had been there when the transaction ledger had been upgraded in 2019, and a temporary dependency had been created between it and the reporting layer. A dependency that was supposed to last 6 weeks and had, through the natural entropy of technical systems, become permanent while remaining completely undocumented. He had been there when the server architecture had been partially migrated in 2021, and a specific partition had been reallocated in a way that created a latent conflict with the reconciliation engine, a conflict that only manifested under very specific load conditions and that had never manifested because Nathan, knowing it existed, had always managed the conditions that would have triggered it. He knew where every body was buried. He knew where every wire ran. He knew the hidden dependencies and the legacy configurations and the dozen places where the infrastructure was held together, not by robust design, but by Nathan Cole's continuous, invisible attention. And on a Friday afternoon in October, Nathan Cole had put his coffee mug in his bag and walked to the elevator and taken all of that knowledge with him, not as an act of sabotage, not with any intention of harm, simply because nobody had asked him to leave it behind. In 9 years, nobody had ever asked Nathan to document what he knew. because documenting it would have required acknowledging that the knowledge existed. And acknowledging that the knowledge existed would have required acknowledging how much of the company's critical infrastructure depended on one person's continuous presence. Derek Paulson had not wanted to acknowledge this. Derek Paulson had been Nathan's manager for 3 of Nathan's 9 years at Meridian. He had come from a different division, commercial operations, not engineering, promoted into the technology management track through a combination of political skill and the genuine organizational ability that had gotten him as far as it could in a world that ultimately ran on technical judgment he did not fully possess. He was not, in the most important sense, a bad manager. He organized well. He communicated clearly. He ran efficient meetings and hit his reporting deadlines and maintained the kind of smooth professional surface that executive leadership found reassuring. What he was not good at was Nathan. Nathan was quiet in ways Derek found unsettling. Nathan did not volunteer information in team meetings. He answered direct questions with precision and then stopped talking. Nathan's weekly status updates were 4 lines long when everyone else's were 14 paragraphs, and Nathan's 4 lines somehow contained more useful information, which Derek found irritating in ways he could not fully articulate. There had been one particular incident that had crystallized Derek's feelings. 6 months before the termination, during a quarterly architecture review, a senior executive from corporate had asked a question about the resilience of the transaction processing layer. Nathan had answered from memory, not from prepared notes, but from the direct, precise, detailed knowledge of someone who had personally built and maintained the system for years. The executive had been impressed, had made a note, had later mentioned Nathan's name in a senior leadership briefing. Derek had not been in that briefing. He had heard about it afterward, secondhand, and the specific flavor of the information, the way it positioned Nathan as the technical authority on a system that Derek nominally led, had settled in his chest in a way he had not been able to fully dislodge. He would not have admitted this, even to himself. He had constructed a narrative about team cohesion and cultural fit and strategic realignment that was internally consistent and professionally defensible, and he had repeated it enough times that it had acquired the texture of truth. But the texture of truth and the truth itself are different things. Nathan had known this. He had known it from the moment Derek had looked at the table in that meeting room rather than at him. He had understood, with the specific clarity of someone who has spent 9 years paying close attention to things others overlooked, exactly what had happened and why. He had said nothing. He had taken the letter, folded it, and put it in his bag. Tell us in the comments where you are listening from. Please like, subscribe, and share HeartLine stories. Every subscriber brings more stories like this. Now, back to the story. The first alert came in at 6:47 a.m. on Monday morning. A transaction processing error, low severity, the kind usually resolved with a configuration reset. The on-call engineer, Jake Reeves, pulled up the runbook and followed the steps. The error persisted. Jake escalated to his team lead. The team lead tried 2 additional remediation steps. The error not only persisted, but cascaded, spreading into adjacent systems, triggering secondary alerts, creating a growing chain of failures that moved through the infrastructure like a crack spreading through glass. By 8:15 a.m., 4 separate systems were affected. By 9:30 a.m., it was 7. By 10:00 a.m., Derek Paulson was standing in the middle of the engineering floor with his phone in his hand and the particular expression of a man who has just understood, viscerally and completely, the difference between what he thought he knew and what he actually knew. "Where's Nathan?" someone said. The room went quiet. Derek called Nathan at 10:14 a.m. He sat in his office to make the call. He closed the door. He found Nathan's number and listened to it ring. Nathan answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was exactly as it had always been, quiet, unhurried, with the particular calm of someone who has already processed the situation they are about to be presented with. "Nathan," Derek said, "we have a situation." "I know," Nathan said. "I can see the monitoring dashboard. My read access was not revoked with my employment credentials. I have been watching since 7 this morning." Derek closed his eyes briefly. "Can you tell me what you're seeing?" "I can tell you what is causing it," Nathan said. "It is the reconciliation engine. There is a dependency between the transaction ledger and the reporting layer, created during the 2021 migration, intended to be temporary, never removed or documented. Last Thursday's maintenance window reallocated a partition that the ledger depends on for its right operations. The reallocation was approved without a dependency review because the dependency was not in any documentation, because I was the only person who knew it existed." The silence on Derek's end was very long. "Nathan," he said finally, "I know I do not have the right to ask you for anything. I know that." He stopped, started again. "I am asking anyway. Will you help us?" Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Send me a contractor agreement," he said. "My standard rate is $400 an hour for principal-level consulting. My attorney will need to review the agreement before I sign. I can be available to start work 2 hours after the signed agreement is received." Derek blinked. "Your attorney?" "I retained counsel on Friday afternoon," Nathan said. "After I received the letter, I anticipated this call." There was something in that sentence. Not gloating, not anger, just the precise statement of a fact that hit Derek harder than any accusation could have. "The agreement will be with you within the hour," Derek said. "Thank you," Nathan said, and ended the call. Nathan arrived at Meridian at 1:30 p.m. He had signed the agreement. His attorney, thorough and fast, had reviewed and approved it in 40 minutes. He dressed in the same clothes he wore to work. He carried his notebook and nothing else. He walked through the lobby with his contractor badge, took the elevator to the 34th floor. The engineering floor went quiet when he appeared. Not the quiet of hostility. The quiet of relief so acute it had almost the same texture. Jake, at his desk, looked at Nathan with an expression that was complicated. Gratitude and guilt and the specific discomfort of someone who had said the obvious thing and watched it create a situation larger than the words. Nathan sat at a workstation. He logged in. He pulled up the system logs, not just the current incident logs, but the historical ones, the full trail from the 2021 migration to the Thursday maintenance window to the Monday morning failure, and read them with the focused stillness of someone reading a language they are completely fluent in. 6 minutes. Without speaking. Then, "I need write access to the partition map and the reconciliation engine configuration, and the Thursday maintenance change log." He was given everything within 90 seconds. He worked for 2 hours and 19 minutes. The work was methodical, and to anyone watching who understood what they were seeing, extraordinary, not because of its speed, but because of its certainty. Nathan never backtracked, never tried something, found it didn't work, and revised. He moved through the repair with the precision of someone who had already worked out the solution before he sat down and was now simply executing it. At one point, Sarah Chen, one of the senior engineers, 12 years of experience, the person who had come closest to finding the root cause on her own, pulled her chair alongside Nathan's workstation. "What are you seeing that we missed?" she asked quietly, genuinely. Nathan paused in his typing. He looked at her. "You were looking at the primary infrastructure," he said. "That is the correct place to look when the failure presents the way this one did. What you did not know was that there was a secondary dependency created during the 2021 migration that was not in any documentation. You cannot look for something that does not appear on any map. How do you know about it? I created it, Nathan said. It was meant to be temporary. I intended to remove it after the migration stabilized. We ran out of time, and I filed a note to myself to address it in the next maintenance cycle. The note was in my personal documentation, not in the shared system. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You carried it, she said. Yes, Nathan said. For 4 years. She looked at the monitor. At the fix Nathan was implementing with the certainty of someone who has known exactly what was wrong since before he sat down. We need to build something, she said, so that the next time someone carries knowledge like this, there is somewhere to put it. Yes, Nathan said. You do. He went back to typing. He fixed the partition dependency. He corrected the reconciliation engine configuration. He updated the dependency documentation, creating, in 3 hours, more accurate infrastructure documentation than existed in the company's entire knowledge base. He tested each fix before moving to the next, methodically without drama. The last alert cleared at 3:49 p.m. The floor exhaled. Nathan saved his work, closed the sessions, logged out, stood up. Derek crossed the floor toward him. Nathan. Nathan looked at him. My contractor invoice will be sent tonight, Nathan said. 8 hours at the agreed rate, including preparation time this morning. Payment terms 30 days, as specified in the agreement. He picked up his notebook. Nathan. Derek's voice was different now, stripped of the executive register, carrying something more human underneath. What I did was wrong. I have known that since Friday. I told myself it was about fit and team dynamics and all the language I used in the HR documentation, and none of it was true. The truth is that you made me feel like I did not understand my own department. And instead of learning from that feeling, I tried to eliminate the source of it. He stopped. That was wrong. I am sorry. Nathan looked at him for a long moment. It was not a simple moment. There was nothing in Nathan's face that suggested the apology was unwelcome, or that it resolved the thing Derek had done. There was the expression of someone who has decided that what they feel about a situation and what they do next are 2 separate questions, and who has already answered the second one. I know, Nathan said simply. Is there anything, Derek said, that would bring you back? Nathan did not answer that question to Derek. He answered it 3 days later in a different room to a different person. Elena Vargas was Meridian's chief technology officer. She was 60 years old and had built 3 engineering organizations from their foundations, and she had the quality, not common and not teachable, of someone who has made enough mistakes in their career to have burned away the ego that makes mistakes necessary. She called Nathan herself on a Thursday morning and said, I would like to have an honest conversation, if you are willing. He was willing. They met at a coffee shop near his apartment. She arrived first and was already seated when he walked in, which was a small but deliberate act of courtesy. Tell me everything, she said. Not just the Monday incident. Everything. So he told her. He told her about the undocumented dependencies. All of them, not just the one that had caused Monday's crisis. He told her about the 2019 migration and the 2021 reallocation, and the 6 or 7 other places in the infrastructure where things were held together by his continuous knowledge rather than by robust documentation. He told her about the times he had tried to raise these issues quietly, and the times that raising them had produced no action because there was no framework for acting on them. He told her about Derek. He told it without embellishment and without vindictiveness, simply as a sequence of events and decisions and their consequences. Elena listened. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "The structural problem," she said, "is not Derek. The structural problem is that you were the only point of failure for a significant portion of our critical infrastructure, and nobody in the organization, including me, recognized that or acted on it. Derek made it visible by making it acute, but the vulnerability existed before Derek." Nathan looked at her. "That is accurate," he said. "What would it take to fix it?" He had been thinking about this for 9 years. "A dedicated knowledge engineering function," he said. "2 engineers whose full-time role is documentation, dependency mapping, and infrastructure archaeology, finding the places where things exist in someone's memory but not in any formal record. A mandatory dependency review for any infrastructure change regardless of scope. And a principal architect role, distinct from line management, distinct from project delivery, for someone whose job is to hold the shape of the whole system in their mind and ensure that shape is recorded and maintained." "And would you be willing to build that?" Elena said. "As the principal architect?" He looked at his coffee, at the morning light through the window. "What happens to Derek?" he asked. Elena did not flinch. "He is being moved to a non-management role in commercial operations. He will not manage technical teams again. That part is already decided." "I would want that in writing," Nathan said, "not the outcome. You do not owe me that. Just confirmation that what happened is formally on record." "I can do that," Elena said. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. "Then I will come back," he said. The knowledge engineering function was approved within 2 weeks. 2 engineers were hired within a month. Within the first 6 months, they had produced Meridian's first complete infrastructure dependency map. 412 pages, annotated, version controlled, updated weekly. The board saw it at the quarterly review. One board member said, "This is either the most impressive piece of technical governance I have seen or the most frightening." She paused. "It is both." Jake Reeves, for his part, spent 2 weeks processing what he had witnessed before he was able to put it into words. He had been the one who had said Nathan's name on the floor that Monday morning. Simply, practically, the way you say the name of the tool you need when the tool is not in your hand. And it had been the right thing to say. But watching what followed, watching Nathan walk back in, watching him work, watching the problem that had defeated an entire floor for 6 hours dissolve in 2 hours and 19 minutes of quiet, certain effort, Jake had felt something more complicated than relief. He had felt the specific discomfort of someone who has benefited from a wrong and knows it. He had not fired Nathan. He had not been involved in the decision. But he had also not said anything in the months before the termination about what the floor would lose. He had assumed, as most people assumed, that the systems were robust enough to function without any single person. He had been wrong. When he wrote to Nathan after his promotion, he said this directly, not as self-flagellation, but as honesty, which he had decided was the only appropriate response. Nathan had written back 6 lines. The last one said, "The important thing now is that the knowledge gets documented so it cannot happen again. That is what I am here to do. That is enough." Jake had read that line many times. He had eventually understood it not as resignation, but as purpose. The specific purpose of someone who has decided that what matters is not justice, but the work, and who has found in the work something sufficient to build a future on. Derek Paulson moved to a strategic planning role in commercial operations. He sent Nathan an email on his first day in the new role. It said, I know I don't have the right to ask anything else of you, but I want you to know that I understand now what I did not understand then. I am glad the company got you back. D. Nathan read it. He did not reply for 3 days. When he did reply, it was 2 lines. Thank you for saying that. I hope the new role is good. N. On a Friday evening, in a different October, a year after the one that had ended with a letterhead and a lobby and an elevator that closed without anyone calling his name, Nathan Cole sat at his desk in his office, a real office now, with a door and a window and a view of the city, his coffee mug on the desk, his mother's photograph, his notebook, a new one, nearly full. He was reviewing the quarterly dependency map update when his phone buzzed. His mother calling to ask about Sunday dinner. He answered. "How was your week?" she asked. He thought about the dependency map. About 412 pages of things that had once existed only in his head. About Elena Vargas saying, on his first day back, quietly and directly, "I am sorry it took a crisis. We should have seen this years ago." "Good," he said. "Just good." He looked at the window, at the city beyond it, at the evening light that came through at the same angle every day, indifferent and reliable and entirely unconcerned with the enormous and quiet things it illuminated. "Better," he said. "It is better now." This has been a HeartLine Stories original. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Write to us at heartlinestories@gmail.com. Every heart has a story worth telling. This is HeartLine Stories, where yours matters.